Hello, I'm your host, Gary Brown, and this is Gamescape. So, it turns out the folks at the local emergency room are pretty nice, but sadly, no gamers, I don't think. Maybe one had that kind of look in his eye, like he still had some imagination in his adult brain. Seriously though, I'm okay. Had this been an actual concussion, at least I would have a good excuse for my behavior. You probably don't want to look at my skull either. There, that better? Gamescape. So, what are we up to here? Well, I have some time on my hands right now to do something fun and creative and exciting, and of course it has to be about gaming. I've been into gaming my whole life, game design. Some of you watching this may have played, let's see, Legends of Boxing, Grid Zone, Quick Fixture, my soccer, quick play soccer simulation. Search and Destroy is my recent RPG product a year and a half ago that we wrote for the Super's Revised system by Hazard Studios. Fantastic little RPG. And so where am I going with this? Well, maybe you can get an idea already from what you've seen at this point, but when I considered the idea of starting a YouTube show, I looked around the gaming-oriented landscape out there, or the Gamescape, if you will, and I saw lots of actual plays, tons of reviews, reviewers, that sort of thing, and that's great. And I started thinking, well, what could I do a little differently? So I decided I wanted my show to be entertaining, goofy. I wanted to run the gamut of the gaming hobby. You know, not just war games, not just board games, not just RPGs. There's people that do that stuff. I kind of want to bring in all kinds of stuff. I want to open the door and touch on the gaming hobby as a whole. Also, I think the videos should be short. So I'm looking for the 15 to 30 minute time frame so that you can sit down and get in a webisode on your lunch hour. Finally, the most interesting, I hope, point of this show is that I would like to give away a copy of our featured games. And in order to do that, we're going to partner with viewers and have active subscribers via Patreon to support that aspect of the show. And, a small percentage of viewers are actually going to support via Patreon. I understand that. But if we get enough, then that can be a sustainable model to keep the show going. So, here on our debut webisode of Gamescape, I'd like to start off actually with not one, but two featured games. What do we got? Let's see, two games. Let's do a classic, Formula Day, current version by Asmodee, and something new. We'll get to RPGs, not this week. Right here. How about that? There's something new. History Maker Golf. So first up, let's look at Formula Day. This is the third edition of a classic Formula One racing game. It's been around since 1991. This one produced by Asmodee. There are a couple good videos, several in fact, on Formula Day in terms of actual plays and reviews. I'll provide a couple links. One is for Geek and Sundry's actual play. The other will be for Dice Tower. And you can look at those to get more details on the game. For now, I want to just do kind of an unboxing and take a look inside and see what this version looks like, and talk about the game experience a bit after that. Okay, so let's take a look inside the box. Really nice box, about the size of the Fantasy Flight games. You got the beautifully illustrated set of rules for beginners, about 8 pages. There you go, look at that. Does a very nice job of laying out the basic rules. You can get right into it. In the basic game, the wear points are handled as a pool. In the advanced game, they're broken out into separate categories. And here's the advanced booklet, which is the same kind of layout and quality of art and so forth. Wonderfully done. This is one of the new wrinkles here that Asmodee added with these street racing characters. So if you've seen Fast and Furious 10 or whatever movie they're on, and you feel like you've just got to get your street racing out of your system, then here you go. Here's a way to do it. The game board. I believe this is the Monaco side of the track, which at the time that I'm shooting this, I believe it is time for the Monaco Grand Prix. Coincidence? Maybe not. You can see how thick and colorful this is. Wonderfully done. Now when I played it, we wanted to use some of the new rules, so we used this Race City side of the track. And you're not seeing the whole thing, of course, but this gives you an idea of how it looks. I'll set that off to the side here. Here's the other half of the board. Monaco, it says. It gives you some weather conditions down here to roll. Also inside here, you see the dice laid out from the yellow one. This is a 4-sided, all the way to a 30-sided. These correspond to your gears, 1st through 6th gear, and then this here is for different kinds of checks throughout the game, like getting a good start or checking for collisions. Here's the cars. They're tiny. Of course, the track, the tracks have very small spaces on them. Look at that. Thankfully, these are pre-painted. And then other game parts, the gears, and the pegs that you use to track wear points on your board. So here's the basic side. And I'll better turn it like that. So your gearbox, your wear points are in that yellow circle there, or the yellow square. And then the advanced side, you see you can break it out into different categories for tires and brakes and engine wear and chassis and that sort of thing. You still got the same gearbox. Pretty neat. And finally, we come to the character cards, which are 2-sided like everything in the game. So on one side, you've got your generic Formula One racer, and then on the other side, you've got the street racing version, the character. So all of these have different abilities, different strengths and weaknesses. So that's pretty cool. And like I said, to me, I think that's a welcome addition to the game. So there you have it. That's what's inside the box. Wonderful stuff. Let's talk about the game experience a bit.
So I got together with my creative advisor for the show, Brian Umberger. He had never played Formula Day before, so I thought that would make for an interesting test of the new rules and so forth. So we had 2 players, 1 lap on the Race City side, the street racing side of the board. And he selected Derek and Tamana as his 2-car team, and I took the color coordinated pair of Dimitri and Jenny for my cars. In our race, Jenny got off to a really good start, jumped out to a big lead, but she had trouble in the first couple corners, turns, rather, overshot and burned up her tires pretty quickly. That opened the door for Derek somewhere in the middle of the track, that big straightaway, that first big straightaway. Derek hit that in great shape. He had been very conservative, and he went from last place to first place in a single massive roll. And we thought that might have been the moment that won the race, but turns out not to be so in this case, because Dimitri then came back with, let me think, I think he hit 3 of the next 4 turns in really almost perfect shape, and he was able to overtake Derek right as they came toward the last turn. But then Brian, using Derek, took a big gamble and made a perfect roll, and we ended up coming out of the last turn with Dimitri and Derek adjacent to each other. We had about 26 spaces to go to hit the finish line, so both guys were in 6th gear, and it all came down to one roll. It was a really fun finish. Dimitri got just enough to get over the finish line, and Derek finished just short of the finish line. So photo finish, really fun. It took us about 90 minutes for 2 players and 2 cars each. So, you know, the game says, you know, 2 to 10 players, 60 minutes. I don't know that I've ever hit that mark. I guess I tend to play Formula Day a little slow, but every race I've been in seems more like 90 minutes is typical. In the end, I was kind of surprised that the street racing features of the board didn't come into play, or didn't have as much impact as I thought they would. Tamana, for example, was hit by Sniper Fire, and he just took like 1 point of engine wear, and it didn't really affect him, as it turns out. One feature we really enjoyed was the police headquarters. When you reach that part of the track, that's a nice area to have this minor goal to shoot for. And so Jenny, who had basically spun out and was out of the race, happened to be the one that hit the police headquarters at the highest speed. And what that means is she got a couple wear points back, and that put her back into the race. That's all it took. So that was pretty cool too. So in the end, you know, very good experience with the street racing rules of Formula Day. Up next, before I get into History Maker Golf, I want to mention something about Yahtzee. So last week my grandma rolled a 4 of a kind, and we interrupt this program to bring you an important news flash. This is Bob Billingham. Inspired by 2-hour war games, UN Resolution 2401 will limit actual wars to 2 hours. Said Secretary General Guterres, "I don't know why we didn't think of this sooner." And now, back to Gamescape. You got to be kidding me. They can just bust in at any time.
It's their network.
Well, true, but it's ridiculous.
You're on the air.
Oh, hi folks. So let's get into History Maker Golf. I want to say a couple things real quick about sports games in general. Most of them are playable solitaire, which is a nice bonus for those rainy days where you can't find an opponent. A lot of busy adults, you know, have a hard time finding other players to enjoy games with sometimes. So that's one of the things that kind of drove me towards sports games. Secondly, if you're a family guy, if you have kids around the house, whatever, sports games are generally family friendly, and if the kids are into sports, then the games themselves can provide another perspective sometimes on the sports that they play, in terms of helping them understand the odds, what are good and bad odds and risk reward and that sort of thing. Lastly, for some households, parents may not want to promote games about warfare and fighting monsters and that sort of thing, and that's understandable. So here again, sports games are an alternative in that regard. I also want to mention that there are some good videos already for History Maker Golf. You can look at Steve Towers. After further review, he did a preview, I think, pre-release of the tournament mode of the game, and then Al Wilson on Hands On provides a good overview of the mechanics and gives you some insight from a playtester's perspective, which is a really good video to watch. And then Keifer Fairbanks also does a series of actual plays, and those are good, to get into the details, and you can sort of learn the game along with him. at times in those videos. So check those out. I'll provide links in the show notes. But now, let's open up this box and see what's packed in this little thing.
Okay, there's a whole lot in this little box, so I'm going to move pretty quickly. Blue and red chips represent confidence and karma and momentum for the golfers as various scenarios come up, various moods that they may be in. You'll learn more about that in some of the other videos. Here's the dice, color-coded. They're read in a certain order depending on what chart you're on and what the situation is. Here's the signature decider die that you'll find in the History Maker line that activates qualities, turns them on and off depending on the situation. It's kind of a 50-50 proposition. Here's an example of a golfer card, Sergio Garcia, rated from the 2000s. So instead of numeric ratings or ranges, you get qualities on these cards, descriptive words. And in the case of his bomber quality or his rust quality that you see here, those are semi-qualities that you would look at the decider die to determine whether it applies or not. So that gives you a quick idea of how these guys are rated. Vijay Singh, Phil Mickelson, Tiger Woods, of course, has got lots of good qualities. Not all qualities are good. Some are bad. A similar approach is taken to the golf courses themselves. So let me see. Here's an interesting hole. Number 2, par 3 at Kapalua in Hawaii, 218 yards. And not an easy hole. This grid down here gives you an actual idea of the physical layout of the thing. You can see that the green, represented by the circle, is down and to the left. There's a lot of rough in front of it. The fairway's off in the middle section here. And then to the right, watch out, there's sand and rough and even some fairway that you can hit out that way. So, interesting approach. A nice abstraction, but it does give you a feel for the aspects of a given hole. There's another one right there. Here's Augusta. I've got to separate that. The rules, 22 pages, black and white, and very well written by Keith. He covers a lot of ground in a fairly brief manner in this thing, because this is really more than one game. There's the tournament mode, there's match play, there's stroke by stroke, and there's a whole lot to explain. So it's pretty impressive to get all that done in a book that size. Something I really respect and appreciate about Play.com's approach is something like these designer notes you get here. In the case of History Maker Golf, it's kind of going where no golf game that I'm aware of has gone before, in terms of abstracting the game and making tournaments playable in one sitting. A lot of interesting decisions are made when you're doing something like that, and Keith Avalone, the designer, takes the time to explain the thought process, some of the logic behind those things. So this chart book is the heart of the game, of course, and it's a wonderful piece of work, I think. My favorite chart book so far from Play.com. Full color, semi-gloss, spiral bound, and I just like the way it reads. I like the way it lays out. Here's par 3. You see in bold the qualities that come into play. There's charts on the side for certain scenarios. Par 4, par 5, bigger chart, more strokes involved, and so forth. And then off of those charts, you can end up with special situations part of the time where you'll refer to, the pin micro chart or the short game micro chart. Which kind of speaks for itself. The gallery cheers, the gallery groans in reactions to certain shots. Of course, the holes themselves, as I mentioned, have their own qualities, and the courses. And so those things can come into play. And you'll look at these charts that represent what the course is kind of throwing at you
And so, like, here's an example of par 3, par 4, par 5, resolving a sand hazard. And here's the same thing for the rough, and the trees, and the water. So it's all covered. Another aspect of History Maker style games are these aspects of experience and now and mood, which is really neat. It brings a whole new twist to sports gamers who like to make their own universe and watch the soap opera kind of evolve from day to day and watch how things transition. And that's something that History Maker brings to the table as well. Then you have special results in the back, but fantastic chart book, I think. I really enjoy that piece of the game. Here's some charts that are printed for convenience, ones that you'll refer to fairly often. The putting card, for example, breaks things down from double bogey scenario to eagle scenario, and from very difficult putts, they say double difficult, to moderate easy, give me putts. And the odds, follow a gradient that's pretty easy to understand and even memorize once you've played it a few times. Here's a nice semi-glossy two-sided full color card for reference. And this covers a couple different things. This is all about tournament mode and making the cut and that sort of thing. And then here are issues and perks. So these are the day-to-day qualities that kind of come and go, may or may not apply to a given golfer at a given time. Good stuff. These cards are used to separate your leaderboard. Here's weather effects. If you want to add that detail to your game, some people like the immersiveness of having those extra effects added. Here's a tournament scoring key if you actually want to track strokes for guys that may not be in the top 10 on the leaderboard, whatever. Caddy cards. Here's another interesting wrinkle. If you actually want to play this face-to-face, then you can introduce this aspect into the game. And so you would play these in certain scenarios to add an extra aspect of strategy in that case. And then here's your score sheets in the back. There's a couple different kinds. One, this looks more like it's for stroke play, and then this is for tournament mode. So there you go. That's what is in the History Maker box.
So, in going through the contents of the box, I've already revealed quite a bit of how I feel about this game. In short, it's really perfectly suited for somebody like me who's not a golfer and not even that much of a casual golf fan. It kind of allows me to follow things at a higher level, not worry about windage, working with the caddy, club selection, minute details of the course, that sort of stuff. It provides the narrative and the overarching story in a playable kind of way. So for me, I've mostly done stroke play, match play, and I can complete a match between a pairing, if you will, in about 40 minutes or so for a full 18 holes, depending on how much note-taking I want to do, how much detail I want to keep from that experience. So that's really good, because otherwise, if you're looking on average probably 70, 75 strokes per golfer per 18 holes. So if you were going through the details of each stroke individually, you're probably not going to get that done in under an hour, or probably even 2. So I really like History Maker, and I think this is something I'm going to be playing more and more as the years go by. It's just a way to sit back and relax and watch a game unfold.
rusty wrench out. So this must be the Game Changer segment, the segment in which I like to look at ways that we can tweak the rules of games and create a slightly different experience to our liking, which is one of the advantages of board games in general. The rules are transparent. You don't have to be a computer programmer to create a slightly different experience with the game that you've purchased. So Formula Day, of course, has been around a long time. I looked around on the web and I saw a few popular mods that people use, one being redlining / slipping the clutch, which allows the players to add one space or subtract one space at the cost of a wear point, which is really useful when coming into turns in particular. That could save you and make the game more competitive. Another rule I saw was double straights, in which the straightaway spaces on the track count as 2 points of movement each, and I think that would help kind of compress the race in a manner of speaking, to where the straightaways don't feel so completely different from the corners. You get into these turns and you'll spend 2 or 3 turns getting through this little space of track, then you'll roll one big die and wham, go all the way through a straightaway. So the double straights kind of gives you a different pace for the course, and I think kind of would keep things tighter as well. A rule that I've used several times and I really like is when you're approaching the finish line, if more than one car is on the same turn, they're in the same action phase, in other words, as you approach that finish line, it's not just the first car to hit the finish line that could win, but it's actually the car that overshoots the finish line by the most spaces in the same turn is then the winner. Any other cars following on in a different turn can't win the race. You have to be crossing the finish line on the same action. So the reason I like that rule is essentially I see the end of every turn in a Formula Day game as a snapshot of where the cars are after that movement phase. So it gives the same treatment to the finish line as it does the rest of the race in my mind. So that's a good way to finish races. It can make things more dramatic a lot of the time. One last idea that I thought of and haven't tried it yet involves the race city side of the track, the street racing stuff, where you come through the police headquarters. I thought it'd be neat to have a police car, which can be designated. It could be one of the cars from the set that you designate as the police car, maybe paint it black and white, and have it emerge from the tunnel at one gear lower than the leader and have it chase the pack. At the end of each turn, the police car is controlled by whoever's in last place. So that gives that player something extra to do and kind of helps keep them engaged. If they're out of the race, they can still play with the police car and have it try to pull over other racers that are ahead of him. And that can vary from turn to turn. A different player might end up in last place at the end of the next turn, and so the control of the police car would change. And in short, if the police car is able to pull adjacent to one of the racers in this last portion of the track, then essentially that car is pulled over and loses a turn, essentially taking it out of the race. But I thought that might be a neat little addition to the street racing rules. And if you were doing multiple laps, that could get even more interesting, right? So something to think about. Now, since we had 2 feature games on the show, I had better start wrapping this up. So that's it for our debut. Hope you really enjoyed it. If so, please subscribe. Each subscription is a vote that you want to see more. If you want to take a more active role, consider becoming a Gamescaper via our Patreon campaign. It's $1 per webisode. We plan to do 1 or 2 webisodes per month. Once we meet our target of 100 patrons, the Gamescapers in the continental United States will be eligible to win the games that we feature on the show. Pretty cool, right? Gamescapers will also be able to participate in polls and surveys regarding the content of upcoming shows, such as the featured games. The details are on our Patreon page, linked in the show notes below. But at this point, I'm really excited and hopeful that this will become a long-running series. And, well, until next time, Onward through the fog.
There's something in the